it like a minute. I like to give it like a minute after the says it's broadcasting just to make sure that we there, and then I'll get started.
Okay.
All right, I think that's good. 30 seconds. All right. Hey, everybody, it's your girl Autumn, and I am here with another edition of As a Fan of College Football. And today I have such a special guest here with me. I started following Mecca last year during our, and when I say our, y'all know I'm talking about the Buckeyes, our historic championship run that I'll be holding on to forever. Um, and I connected with him on there, and something just said, you know what? There's some things that I don't know that he probably knows. So I reached out to him. So just welcome Mekka Don to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I really appreciate you being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So do me a favor and just introduce yourself, because when I reached out to you, I specifically reached out to you about NIL and the transfer portal. And this was only based upon what I've seen you post on social media.
Yeah.
But then I went to your website and was like, oh, there's a whole lot going on up in here. So I think it's just best that you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Mekka Don. I am a former Ohio State football player. Currently, I'm an attorney, entrepreneur, author, actor, musician. I do a lot of different things. But also, most recently, next week I'll be launching an AI platform that I built called EllaFly, which is a AI brand management platform and content generation platform that's personalized to the user. So just I've had my hands on a lot of different things, and but as a attorney, I've definitely dealt with a lot of athletes and managed a lot of athletes' careers, and then now managing a lot of NIL. So I know that was part of the reason why you reached out as well. So anyway, glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's what's up. So just a little bit about your background at Ohio State. Like when did you play at Ohio State? What position did you play? You gotta give us the whole tea.
Sure. So interestingly enough, growing up, I was a soccer player my whole life through my junior year, and then it wasn't until my senior year that I ended up playing football for St. Francis de Sales in Columbus, Ohio. And I was fortunate enough to play on a team that was really, really good. So we had a lot of players that ended up going Division One, and as a result of that, we had a lot of scouts that would come to our games, and they would see me and be like, "Who's that fast wide receiver out there?" They didn't know who I was. It was literally my first year. So I was fortunate enough. We ended up winning the state championship and had a lot of extra games, and so I was fortunate enough to get looks from small schools and Ivy League schools, and then Ohio State as a preferred walk-on, which was interesting. I had a full ride academic scholarship to Ohio State, and they offered me a preferred walk-on opportunity, and I couldn't believe it. It was almost like a joke because, again, I grew up as a soccer player. I never had any intention, really growing up, of being a football player. And so that opportunity came, and so I went to Ohio State as a preferred walk-on as a wide receiver. I ended up graduating early from Ohio State in 3 years because I wanted to get to New York and get to law school and start pursuing other things in entertainment and law. So I only played on the team for maybe about a year and a half because I was just really focused on graduating. But some of the best years of my life, the brotherhood is a real thing. Those guys treat me like a brother still to this day. I've gotten to meet all my heroes who were before me, from Archie Griffin to Eddie George and Sean Spring, everybody I've gotten to and became business partners with Chris Carter. I mean, it's just amazing what that brotherhood has done for my life. So just kind of almost a fluke incident that really got me there. But it's one of the best
So
things.
never expected to go to Ohio State and play football. You really were just going because you wanted to go, get your education, go to law school, and it just kind of happened that way. That is so awesome.
100%. Yeah. So just a miracle, and God, God has his plan for you. And so you never know what it's going to be, but I definitely took full advantage of it. And even, many, many years later, I'm still in business with the university. And, I had the anthem for the football team last year, the Buckle Up, which is a song they made out to every game for the championship season. So, that's many, many years later. So you just never know where things are going to go. So, but I'm very grateful.
Oh, I know that's right. I know that's right. That is so cool. So, before we get into chatting about name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal, really quick, because we had a very big event in college football last night. I mean, how you feel about it? I mean, I know it was like we weren't there, but
Yeah, yeah,
other than that, like, give me a nice little synopsis, a little overview, a little conclusion of how you felt about the national championship being held at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, and it was Indiana, the Big Ten Indiana versus the ACC Miami Hurricanes. How
yeah.
you felt about it?
I mean, I think from just a college football perspective, uh, it was an amazing game. Just if you're a fan of the sport or a fan of anything athletic or competitive, it was an amazing game. I thought that Miami, every time that you thought that Miami was knocked out, they got back up and fought back. So kudos to them. I thought they played an amazing kind of counterpunch game, but ultimately Indiana was too much for them. And Fernando Mendoza proved a lot to me as well. He was very tough in that game. That touchdown he scored at the end, I think we'll probably be seeing that on Sports Center or whatever for years to come. So from a college football perspective, I thought it was a great game. It was very entertaining. But as an Ohio State fan, it really worked my nerves because first of all, those are the only two teams that we lost to this season. But also both of the games that we lost are games that I believe that we could have won and should have won.
Absolutely.
So it was bittersweet in that regard. Uh, but I think Indiana's, just kind of what we were just talking about before. When it's your time, it's your time, and I think this was Indiana's. It was their time, and Kurt Signetti was out to kind of prove to the world, I think, kind of a different way of thinking. So
Mhm.
people aren't going to be accepting excuses from people anymore, particularly college football coaches. The way that he built his team, the way that he came to Indiana last year, got them in the playoffs, and then the next year win a national championship, going 16-0. It's an unbelievable story. It's actually going to go down as one of the most impressive stories in probably the history of college football. So that wasn't lost on me either. That I was watching something that was very historic as well. So even as a Buckeye fan, I could appreciate that. And congrats to Indiana on winning the chip.
I know, man. It was same. I have the same sentiments just about with everything that you said, and also the whole 16-0 thing. I don't know if we'll ever see it again, especially with the way that the college football playoffs are expanding
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all that good stuff. So yeah, kudos
yeah.
to Indiana. They ran it like it was
It's
lit.
very hard to go 16-0. And one thing about Indiana, generally when you go undefeated, you're going to have at least a game or two, maybe three, where the ball has to bounce your way. A miracle kind of has to happen. Even when Ohio State went undefeated in 2002, the Purdue game was crazy. 4th and 1, we're down 6-3. Last play of the game, almost, well, not last play, but close to it. Get a Hail Mary to Mike Jenkins. If he drops that ball or something happens, it's a totally different season, a totally different story. Same with
Mhm.
Indiana this year. If you look back at their game against Penn State,
Penn State.
a miracle at the end of that game. I mean, the unbelievable, historically great catch to win that game. If they don't win that game, who knows what happens? If our Ohio State's kicker kicks the field goal and makes the field goal, or if we go for it, which we should have gone for it anyway, and we take the lead, and Indiana has to go a different path. Who knows? But that's why destiny is what it is, and so I really truly believe in it, and I believe that it was Indiana's time. So um, kudos to them.
And I will say this really quick about the Indiana Penn State game. I always say it. I think that the catch was a lot better than the throw.
Yeah,
And I I know that everybody was saying that that was Mendoza's Heisman moment,
mm,
but in my eyes, he had his Heisman moment last night. Like I
yeah.
just think he played pretty much to perfection after getting hit so many times. I knew he was tough because he took that one hit against
Mhm,
us at first, in
mhm.
the, Big Ten championship. So I
Yeah,
knew he was tough already, but he took plenty of hits last night. He shook it off, he got up, and it was history. So, yes,
100%.
great, great, great.
100%.
So, speaking of all of that, I think what I wanna go into first since we're talking about Indiana and how there can't necessarily be any excuses. What they did with a 9, 5, and 4-star team, they got these players out of the transfer portal. Am I right
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
that?
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about how the transfer portal works and how you think it worked in their favor.
So once they changed the rules, there used to be a rule where if you transferred within the same division, you had to sit out a year. They changed the rule, got rid of all the transfer rules, and now that there's one transfer portal window, which is this year was January 2nd to January 16th, and I'm not sure if it's that same window every year, but it's close to that if it's not. And during that period of time, if you're an athlete that wants to enter the portal, you have to enter the portal during that period of time. Now, you just have to declare that you're entering the portal. After that period of time, the portal closes. You can no longer transfer for the next season. But all the guys that are still in the portal still can negotiate contracts or negotiate to go to another team pretty much until the next season starts. So we're going to see a lot of that now. People think that the transfer portal is closed and nothing else is happening. Oh no, there are a lot of signings, a lot more signings that are coming up. Coincidentally, the transfer portal coincides now with what's happening with NIL, where players can be paid essentially unlimited, uncapped, unknown amount of money for NIL, but then also be part of revenue shares. So what's happened now is that you have guys who can get a better opportunity financially somewhere else because they may be a little bit higher on the totem pole at that particular school. It may not be the best decision for them long run in terms of their future and their development. But I mean, listen, if somebody offers you, 2 million to go do the same job that you were making $500,000 doing, can you blame them? So the transfer portal now, with the fact that it's not capped in terms of how often you can transfer, and then you have the NIL coinciding with that, we're seeing people enter the transfer portal at record numbers. And I think that it's going to be, although obviously I'm a huge advocate for players being compensated,
Same.
I think the way that the structure is untenable and it's unsustainable, and it's actually going to end up hurting the players in the long run. Because first of all, you're going to have donors who eventually are going to pull out. They're not People aren't going to just keep donating money to this thing without any kind of rules or guidelines indefinitely. And people just can't afford it. Some people can't. I mean, unless you're Mark Cuban, right? Uh,
Right.
and then, and then the second part of it is that schools are looking now at the portal as a way of building their team. So there's also a huge amount of effect on high school athletics as well, on high school kids that are coming up. Which brings me to my next point. Kurt Signetti went and looked at the portal, and he did something very intentional, which a couple people have reported on, but I'm not sure it's been talked about enough. He went and built a team. Yeah, he didn't have 4 and 5 stars, but he went and built a team of veteran players. I think the average age on that team was almost 24 years old, 23.
Mhm.
Veteran players, guys that have played a lot of football. And if you're a football coach or person who watches football, you understand how important experience is. Raw talent from an 18-year-old that's coming out of high school versus a 23-year-old that's played 4 years of football somewhere else and has been an underdog, has a chip on their shoulder, but really, really understands the game. And that makes way for, first of all, maturity, the ability for people to buy into something that's greater than them. And if you watched Indiana play, you really could tell that those guys were all playing for something that they felt was bigger than them. They weren't playing just to show off. And there are a bunch of great players, good to great players, but really played even better than they probably are individually. The sum was better than than the individual aspect of it, and part of that has to come with coaching. So I think Signetti was very pointed in terms of the type of guys that he wanted on his team. Obviously, they're very talented guys. A lot of those guys are going to play in the NFL. So just because they're not 4 and 5 stars and all that type of stuff, that doesn't mean that they're not very talented players. And so I think we're going to see a shift from other programs who are going to essentially try to copy what it is that he's doing. I'm even looking at Ohio State right now and a lot of their additions in the portal. A lot of the guys are older guys, veterans who've played
Mhm.
a lot of football. They're not really going after the guys that some of the guys that we lost. We lost a lot of guys, but guys who haven't really played a ton of football, just have maybe 4 or 5 stars coming out of high school, but haven't really played a lot. Ohio State's not really going after those guys. So I think the portal, what we saw from Indiana was masterful. I think Signetti is an unbelievable coach. The other thing is now they have a lot of money now and a lot of donors.
Mhm.
Indiana, largest alumni. I thought it was Ohio State, but it's actually Indiana now. And they have a lot of money. And they went into the portal and they just went shopping right away. As soon as that portal opened, they were just hitting licks left and right. And
Yeah.
so that combined with the quality of coaching, the maniacal nature with which Signetti prepares, I think Indiana's here to stay. I don't think they're a flash in the pan at all. So, but the portal has just created so many different opportunities for players, and I think in some ways it's been fantastic. It's been great. It's been empowering. I have a nephew who just entered the portal from University of Toledo, who's about to commit to Western Kentucky. Breaking news.
Now,
Uh,
how you just gonna leave the Rockets though? You know what I'm saying? That's my alma mater, you know what I'm saying? That's where I spend all my money, but I
Well, I'll
get
tell you what,
it.
his younger brother is still there. He didn't enter the portal, so he stayed. He's still on the football team at University of Toledo. But so I've seen it work well for people, and I've seen it work well where not even just financially, but guys are going to a situation where they don't want to be buried on the depth chart anymore. They want to play. They want an opportunity to play. This is their dream. They don't need to sit for 4 years and pray that a coach puts them in. And a lot of guys went that route back in the day, and they went that route where they stayed somewhere and 4 years, 5 years, didn't get on the field, never got a chance to really showcase themselves, and didn't get a chance to reach their dream. So I've seen the positive sides of it too, where guys are going, getting the opportunity to play, getting more money for sure. I think is part of it. But the downside, I think, is that you're going to see a lot of kids, even more than you've seen in the past, who enter the portal and don't come out of the portal because there might not be enough spots. And that's the sad part of it is kids are getting bad advice from a lot of these punk agents like this, because somebody said street agents who are just ushering kids into the portal left and right and taking exorbitant amounts of percentages of their contracts and without care of the consequences. There's no regulation there. So anyway, that's a lot. I know
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Now
yeah.
Imma go back to what you said about, um, NIL and revenue sharing,
Mhm.
because I don't think that a lot of people understand that there's 2 different components there, me being one of those people, which is why you're here.
Yeah.
So, explain to people like me who are just fans, who just don't even, you know what I'm saying, we just here to watch football, but we
Right.
kinda wanna know what's going on. Explain the difference between name, image, and likeness and revenue sharing, and where does this money come from?
Okay. So name, image, and likeness really is just the ability for players to make money off of their name, image, and likeness from corporations or sponsors or what we call collectives, which are basically sponsors of the program. That money cannot come from the school. So it doesn't come from any of the revenue that's generated from the school. But the schools are allowed to help facilitate these deals. So if Gatorade wants to hire Jeremiah Smith, for example, the school can help facilitate the deal between Gatorade and Jeremiah Smith. But the money's not coming from Ohio State. And that money, the amount of money that a kid can make in NIL is unlimited right now. So if somebody comes and says, I want to give you 100 million, they can come and give a kid 100 million, right? So that's kind of how the name, image, and likeness works. So you have the concept that players can really generate money from their name, image, and likeness, which is what started this. But then obviously everybody got creative and figured out, well, okay, the money can't come from the school technically, but we can still work with our sponsors and work with our partners and different, boosters and figure out creative ways to raise money to be able to make the packages attractive enough for the talented players. So that's NIL. Now, what's also happened recently is the revenue share, which is now uh, schools are now able to share up to 20.5 million, I believe, in revenue amongst their student athletes.
Now that's across the board though, not just one program.
Yeah, across the board.
Okay.
Uh, so, and they can figure out how they want to divvy that up. The schools have the full autonomy to figure out how they want to do that. So, the reality is that they're setting that money up kind of based on the value of the sport, the value of the player, that type of thing. So they have autonomy to do that. Whether or not people are actually following that, we don't know. But that's the opportunity. So now what's happening is you have these packages that are being put together for these players in the portal where they say, okay, we have a package which is, let's just say 1.5 million for you per year. And part of that package will be NIL money that's coming from a sponsor, Nike, Gatorade, so and so, and they have specific obligations for that money. They have to do a certain level of appearances. They have to appear in a commercial. They have to post on social media, whatever. And then a portion of that money is actually coming from the revenue share. Now, this is within the last year. And for that, that's just revenue share. There are no specific obligations that are tied to that money. And that money comes from the university.
So the revenue share is kind of like a paycheck. It's kind of like what you're working for, like the income that you're working for. And the NIL is kind of like, but here's the bonus.
Well, the NIL is actually, you actually have specific obligations that you have to fulfill
Okay.
to get that. And if you don't, it's a contractual deal, right? So if you don't, then you don't get see the money, right? It's just like any other contract. The revenue share is different, even though the kids are signing documents with the university acknowledging this revenue share. There are no specific, besides, showing up at practice, being in good standing, being eligible, all those type of things. There are no other additional obligations that you have to do to participate in that.
So what do you think? Because I know that I've seen several like social media posts or whatever news outlets saying like a lot of the guys that are playing football who are getting NIL and revenue sharing, their income is more than a lot of rookies that are in the NFL. How do you think how do you think that's going to go over, like, over these next few years? Like, do you think that the NFL is going to have to offer them more? Like, how do you think that's gonna work?
That's an interesting question. I think so. There are a number of different dynamics with that I think are interesting. I think one is there are definitely players who are making more money in college than they could potentially in the NFL. A lot of times you'll see that from a guy who would have been a perfect example of that is a guy like maybe Tim Tebow, right? I can't imagine what his NIL, or Braxton Miller, right? What would their NIL have been in college because of how valuable they are? Johnny Manziel, how valuable they are to their college program. They may not necessarily turn out to be
Maurice
great
Claret,
NFL
if
players.
we keeping it a buck, but I ain't gonna get upset on this
Right.
on
But he's a guy that also would have been great in the NFL if he had probably stayed along the same
I
path.
get okay, I get what you're saying, yeah.
But I'm mentioning guys that probably may or may not have made it in the NFL just on a traditional path, but yet they were still extremely valuable. Damon Williams, for example, at Washington. I don't know how well he'll do in the NFL. I think he's a great player,
Mhm.
but he's a good example. He's making four to 6 million, right? And so if he were to get drafted, let's say, third round, second, third round, he's not going to see that type of money. So I think that there are a couple things that are going to happen as a result. First of all, you're going to see more kids stay in college probably that extra year than you would typically see. But I do think though that the top guys, for example, are going to make more money in the NFL. Jeremiah Smith is going to make more money the day he signs his contract in the NFL than he would make at any college program. So the top guys are still probably going to go. And the NFL, the interesting thing is that the NFL kind of has a problem on some levels because from a development standpoint, part of what the NFL always had was they had essentially they had a built-in farm system into the NFL
Okay.
where all of these schools were essentially developing this talent and then just feeding them into the NFL without the NFL having to pay for it. See, in baseball, you have a
Mhm.
farm system, but they have to pay for the Columbus Clippers and they have to pay for the Double A teams, and the NBA
Mhm,
has a
mhm.
league, right? There is nothing like that. College football is essentially the G League for the NFL. But now it's turned into a competitor in some ways. So
Mhm.
for dollars, for attention, the next year's college football championship is January 25th. Keeps getting pushed back closer and closer to the Super Bowl. You have players making money who may not look at the NFL as the end game anymore. There may be guys that say, "Look, man, let me make this 10 million real quick in college and get up out of here. I don't even want to go put my body on the line for that." So
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot of different elements of this. I mean, some of it is not going to be immediate. We won't see it right away. There's going to be some fallout here for sure. And I think that I bet you behind the scenes, the NFL is going to really try to get involved and push their weight around because what's happening now is, guys aren't necessarily being developed at the same rate either. That's the other thing. This guys,
Yep, I was gonna bring that up.
yeah, they're jumping from here to here and there to
Mhm.
there. They're not caring as much about development. Coaches are jumping from here to here and there to there. And as long as if it starts getting treated like the pros, then now you have a competitor instead of a farm system. And I think the NFL is not going to be happy about that for long.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought about that, especially with because I know you're on Twitter. You see the outcry about, and you mentioned earlier about a lot of the guys that left Ohio State to jump in the portal, and I don't know all of them, but I'm pretty sure some of them may have only been there for a year. They didn't. I know Ohio State, and I tell people this all the time. I know Ohio State is big on development, like
Mhm.
especially when it comes down to like offensive players. I mean, we see that's what we see the most.
Yeah,
But if they're not patient, like, you know what I mean? And I can understand, you don't wanna waste your whole college year sitting behind someone,
yeah.
but I know that that was a big thing, for Ohio State. So, I wanna ask you, so, first of all, you did mention that you are what, like a consultant
Mhm.
for athletes.
Mhm.
What do you do for these athletes? Like, what do you do? How do you help them? How do you help them to understand how the system works and try to give them this instead of you know what I mean, like being somebody. I know you said what did you say, what, your nephew or your cousin, like
Mhm.
just being a family member. Like, how do you actually help them and gain their trust
Yeah.
with these things?
So there are multiple things. So one thing, I'm not an agent, and I've never wanted to be an agent. And
Okay.
every agency in the world has probably tried to get me to be an agent at some point, but I don't like it because I don't like that line of work, and I don't like the nature of relationships. I don't like how the nature of relationships change. That being said, I have so many relationships with you know, former players and current players, young guys that are in college right now, high school kids that come to me for advice generally, or I'm just kind of their de facto lawyer as a result of just being around the guy that they know that can help them. And
Right.
so I help them. So I help them in a lot of formal ways and then also informal ways. The formal ways is I actually have workshops on NIL and branding and kind of all of the pitfalls that you need to understand from a legal perspective, right? Taxes, having an accountant, understanding what you signed, contracts, that type of thing. The informal way is much more about mentorship and making sure that they understand the life decisions that they're making. And they're being forced to make some of these decisions at a very young age. Imagine if you're 18 or 19 and somebody throws a couple million in front of you, you know, how does that not, even if you're happy, even if you're level headed, how does that change how you feel and how you operate, how you move? I remember the NFL coaches, some college coaches used to hate going to the NFL because they said, look, all these guys have money. Some of them have more money than me. How do you coach
Right.
somebody like that? So imagine an 18-year-old kid or 19-year-old kid now with money, who
Right.
sometimes making more money than their position coach. How do you deal with that? So I think part of it is trying to give them perspective. But again, it's hard. How do you give somebody perspective? And then you have family members in the background.
Yes.
And this is no matter what type of environment you come from, there are going to be family members calling, hitting you up, trying to control the situation, making deals behind your back, potentially telling people, well, I could bring him to this or whatever it is. People hitting you up for money, and every other month, people close to you. So there are a lot of other things too, that I encourage, like mental health. stuff, and really, really trying to figure out who they are and what they want long term, and understand that this is great what they're getting right now, but there's a much longer life to live, and there are extreme consequences for the decisions that they're going to make as they continue to move forward. I'll give you a quick example of something that I've done formally for a player very recently. Well, it wasn't that recent, but it's just something that stuck out in my mind. So I handle different contracts, trademarks. I've done trademarks for Paris Johnson. I've done just did a trademark for Trey McNutt, who was a five-star cornerback out of Oregon. Done trademarks for a lot of different athletes, and but the other thing that they ask me to do a lot of times is to review their contracts, sometimes with their agents, or if it's NIL stuff or endorsement deals. So there was an agency, a big agency, that one of my, I guess you can call him a mentee, but he was a friend as well, was about to sign with. He was first round NFL draft pick from Ohio State. And he was about to sign with this agency. He had developed a great relationship with the agent, thought they were friends, so to speak.
Mm.
So he asked me last minute before he signed the contract. I'm so grateful that he did this. He said, Matt, can you just look over the contract for me and let me know what you think? I was like, cool. So I'm reading the contract. Everything seems cool. And all of a sudden I get to this one clause and I'm like, I cannot, I had to like reread it a couple times. Like, did I just read what I thought I read? You know, like this is crazy.
I
So I'm
think tried to pull the okey doke.
the okey doke. So I'm like, hold on. So I went back and read it again. And I was like, wow, these dudes try to pull a fast one on my boy, a fast one. And what was so crazy about it was he trusted them a lot because he had developed a relationship with them over a long period of time. So even as I'm reading it, I'm like, man, I'm going to have to break it to him. Like, not only no, you can't sign this contract, but they try to play you, my boy. Like they tried to play you.
Man.
So what they did was they
So
told
you
him,
know I was gonna be nosy and
oh,
ask.
for sure. No,
You
I
knew I was about to
tell you,
ask. Okay.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't have brought it up if I wasn't going to tell you. So they basically told him that they were going to take 1% of his contract, and agents are able to take up to 3%. But they said they're going to take up to one. They were only going to take 1%, and a lot of agencies are doing that they do that with the first round, the top talent guys, because they can still make money on that contract, but their second contract, and it also builds up their overall just balance sheet, right, to have that type of talent on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
So fine. So that's what they told him. What they didn't tell him was that they said that if in the event they're going to take 1%, but in the event that he fires them before his second contract, which would be 4 to 5 years later, he would have to pay them back the delta between the 3% that they didn't take and the 1% that they took. So essentially that 2%. And that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So basically what they did was, because the second contract is where a lot of the athletes that's where they get their biggest payday a lot of times in the NFL. That second contract can be your $100 million contract. So basically they're trying to lock him in for 8 years, and at least into that second contract, because who's going to want to, when you're going to up for your second contract, are you going to want to pay somebody back $300,000? So
Right.
you're not going to fire them in that situation. So it basically locks him into something that he didn't understand. And it's very, very aggressive type of penalty for firing them. And I think that the shadiest part about it was just that they didn't communicate it to him, right? If they would have told him that and said, hey, this is what we're doing, just so you know, very clearly, if you don't like this, I understand, but this is what we're doing, that's a totally different thing. And that's what we want as adults. We want the information. Let us be able to
Exactly.
decide whether we want to do it or not, but they didn't. And so when I told him, he was actually pretty heartbroken.
I bet. Because he thought they was cool.
Percent. And so, and this is one of the big agencies too, like the ones that people know about. So that type of situation, I think, is something that happens more often than not. There are a lot of predators, and now in the NIL space, you don't even have to be certified. So everybody's an agent. It is crazy what is
So
happening right
you don't have to be
now. Mm-mm,
certified?
mm-mm. Nope. For
Or
NIL,
or do you have to be registered? You don't
nope.
have to do none of that?
Mm, nope. There are no rules. So you have, aunties, uncles, cousins, shady dudes who just happen to know somebody, just running around. There's no certification like in the NFL. You have to be certified, the whole thing. So it's a very dangerous thing that's happening. And so for me, I ultimately end up always staying close
Mhm.
to young guys, particularly, even though I'm not necessarily their official agent, and I won't be, because there's just too much shady stuff going on in the business. And so it's very sad, but it's just reality. Where there's money, there's shadiness. And when there's young people with money, just like in the entertainment industry, you guarantee there are going to be predators around. So it's a scary situation that's happening right now, honestly, in college football. I'm very scared about what's going on right now because I don't see who's coming to save it. I don't see the regulation or the body.
Right.
I don't see who's going to come fix the number of different issues that are going on right now. So
Okay, so just a couple more questions and then I'll let you get on with your Tuesday night. So, um, how does how does scholarship apply? Like how does scholarship work its way into all this? Because there's still actually scholarships to be given by these schools, right?
yeah. So what I'm seeing is that they're now including cost of scholarship as part of their packages that they're giving.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure how that's going to work moving forward. And ultimately, though, and this is just the reality of things, once you start treating everything like a business transaction, then both sides are going to start saying, okay, well, let's look at the overall value that I'm actually giving you. Right.
Mhm.
And there are people who are advocating out here right now that guys should not get scholarships anymore. That
I've
that's,
seen that.
it's they should, or at least they shouldn't be paid by the university, or they should be included as part of the overall amount that's given in the NIL packages. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, there's some, I guess, some laws, uh, Title IX and stuff like that, that play into whether or not you can even really do that, and whether these kids can ever really truly be considered employees. So there's some legal precedent prohibiting kind of that classification. But I imagine over time, the way that this is operating, there's something's going to have to be done here. And here's one other thing I'll say real quickly is that the other difference between what's happening now in college and what's happening at the pro level is that the pros have unions.
Mhm.
They have people advocating on their behalf. These players do not have that. They're fighting their own individual battles. Um, yeah, Tamara, it can get grimy. So so that's the thing. It's very scary. We saw a player's mom who was making deals behind his back, signed up forged paperwork for him to go to a different school that he didn't
We
want to go.
saw it. We all saw it in 4K, didn't we?
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse because now the money's getting bigger. And one last thing I'll tell you, just a little piece of insider info. There are schools
Oh,
that
with the exclusives. I know that's right.
are giving bags to family members on the low. Like, yo, make sure he comes here.
I
You
mean,
yeah,
that's
like
old. We know that's old
100%.
news.
And not just family members. Sometimes it's agents.
Mm,
So the agent like, look, we'll give you on top of what the player's going to pay you. We'll give you an extra 50 racks. This is happening for sure. I know for sure that this is happening. I've been told. Been in these situations. We'll give you an extra 50 racks if he comes here. We'll give
like
you,
an incentive.
yeah, that he doesn't have to know about. Then you take whatever percentage you're taking. And here's the last thing. Sorry, so many last things, right? But a lot of these agencies are taking 20, sometimes I've heard 30% of these players' contracts. So
Mm,
think about this real quick. You have five players that you're taking 20%, which is crazy. In the NFL, you could take a maximum of 3%. But these guys are taking 20%.
wait a minute. What?
NFL, you take a maximum of 3%. These guys, a lot of these NIL agents are taking up to 20. I've heard even 30% of these deals.
Oh my goodness.
The good guys are taking between 5 and 10%. Okay.
And
So
that's
imagine,
still a lot.
yeah. So these guys are getting, so the transfer portal happens. Let's say you get five, you take 20%. Let's say you get five players to go into the portal, and each one of them gets $1 million, and you get 20%. You made $1 million in a week as a unregistered. Just You know what I'm saying? So think about the incentive.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're incentivized to get as many players in the portal as possible. You're not incentivized to have them stay at their school unless you're renegotiating the contract with the school, right? But you're incentivized to get them in the portal and go get them a bag, and you don't care what happens after that. You know, you got your bag, they got theirs. You keep it pushing, and that's what's happening. So then you have a lot of players who are getting bad advice because these agencies are saying, "Hey, oh, I can get you this, I can get you that. Yeah. Go in the portal, go in the portal, go in the portal." Oh, such and such called, and they said they're interested. So then you got these players excited. They jump in the portal, and then they never come out.
That is
They go
crazy.
back to the original team asking to be back, and the original team's like, "Man, we already know."
Nope.
Done.
Right.
Yeah, mm,
Oh my goodness. It is a madhouse.
it is. It's absolutely. It's worse than I'm even saying, which is
S
makes me sad as someone who's a fan of the sport.
so, I'm pretty sure that you saw what was going on with the young man. I think you mentioned him earlier, the young man from, was it Washington?
Yeah, Demond
Who
Williams.
Demond Williams. So, eh, eh, what how I guess, how do I ask this question? Like, so he had a deal
Hmm.
with Washington.
Yeah,
How legally binding? Because I always see like they're getting ready to sue, da da da. Because the same thing happened with somebody else earlier, and I think it was like some crazy stuff with Nico, and you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
how legally binding? Because that he went back, right? He went back to Washington,
yeah,
but what are the I don't understand how any of this happened. Now,
yeah.
of course, people are of course people are saying like it was some tampering done.
Sure.
Did that school not realize what they were doing? Like I just don't the whole thing is just
Yeah, it's actually grimy, and that's why I always want to make sure that I always mention that the reason why we're here is because of the adults, the so-called adults, the administrations, the coaches, the NCAA, all that. That's why we're here. So I don't blame the kids for any of the things that are happening right
right.
now.
Right.
Even if they're
Exactly.
making bad decisions, even if they're, I don't blame them for nothing. They can only operate in a system that's been created, right? So I always want to make sure I mention that. Duke's quarterback, Mensa, he's being sued right now by Duke as well for entering the
I
transfer
saw that.
portal. Similar circumstances. So basically, what happened was Damon signed an agreement with Washington for, I believe, $4 million, and in that contract, there are a number of different things that he was obligated to do. And then the next week, it appears that the story behind the scenes that LSU came with a bigger bag, like $6 million, and had gotten to him.
Mr. Messy Boots, Mr. Messy Boots over there at LSU.
Right. And got him interested and got to someone close to him. And next thing you know, he wants to enter the portal. Now Washington was like,
Hold up, Playboy.
hold up, player.
Not too
And they were
fast.
like, not today. We will sue. We will go to the fullest extent of the law. And interestingly enough, I'm actually friends with the University of Washington's athletic director. So I got the chance to talk to him a little bit about this too afterward. But they were ready to go. Now, here's the thing: the contract is legally binding, but the problem is that you can't force him to play for you. You can't force him to come on the field. That's not legal. You can't legally do that. You can try to file an injunction to prevent him from playing somewhere else. Also, probably not likely to win, just because that's too restrictive. Basically, the law doesn't like to restrict people's ability to move and operate.
Mhm.
But what they could have done was they could have filed for different types of damages. And so the damages that I potentially saw were, okay, what was the cost of acquisition for him? So all of the lawyers that they had to use, all of the resources that they used to try to get that deal done. Number one. Number two, the fact that when he had agreed to go into the portal, by the time he had reneged, essentially, all of the other top QBs that were in the portal were gone. So now you're essentially, I don't know how it would be framed exactly legally, but basically the you didn't give them the opportunity to mitigate
Right.
essentially because there were no other uh, quarterbacks of that caliber, and that's such an important position. So what are the damages potentially there? Then the third one, which I thought would have been very interesting too, is expected revenue as a result of him being the quarterback for the University of Washington.
Mm,
So all of the things you're talking about, attendance, you're talking about
mhm,
jersey sales, you're talking about, what does it mean to get to, to be 10-3 versus being 6-6,
mhm.
visibility and eyeballs. And that's much more of a harder kind of damages thing to prove, but it is something that I thought would have been interesting. And so anyway, somebody ended up getting a hold of him, thank God, and said, listen, boy, this is not going to go well for you. You might go
Mm,
somewhere else, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny, and it's going to ruin your reputation, so on and so forth. And so that's the other thing that I think um, a lot of the things people have to realize, a lot of these young players have to realize is that these contracts are legally binding. You are now an adult. You are now going to be treated like one. They're not going to play with you when it comes to millions of dollars. Like the quarterback from Duke, they're not playing with him. Now, I know Miami potentially with Duke quarterback, they know that this is going on, and they've probably agreed to pay whatever additional fees that they're gonna, that he's gonna have to pay. But again, there's still reputational issues here. There's trust issues here. There's a lot of stuff going on that these guys are dealing with at a young age, and there aren't a lot of people out there protecting them. So it's it's going to be a crazy fallout to see what happens next.
And real quick, back to the transfer portal. So I know we have the one window, but if something happens, right? So like if the coach leave or if there's a change in the program, like it opens for that particular school too, right?
Yeah, 15 days. I think if your coach leaves, you have 15 days from the day your coach leaves to kind of there's like a transfer window. So it doesn't have to be during the portal period.
And so all of the kids that are in the portal now that are still there, you said like they're still making deals and all this. How long do they have to make those deals?
So you need to be on essentially be registered and eligible for the next season, whatever sport it is. So for football, by fall, they would have to they could make this deal all the way through spring if they want. Yeah.
Oh,
So we'll still probably be hearing about deals in the spring, but they just need to be able to be on campus and be registered and stuff like that by the time fall rolls around. Now, most guys are going to be signed by spring because coaches are going to want their players in spring practice.
mhm.
But then they're there indefinitely. So they're going to be kids. There are going to be lots, probably in the thousands, between all the different divisions, who, when fall rolls around, they are not going to be on the team, and so they're still in the
Mhm.
portal. But then they're going to have to deal with the next round of high school recruits, the next round of JUCO recruits, the next round of D2 players that are coming up, and then obviously the next round of guys that are also coming up in the transfer portal. So going in that portal, it is a very dangerous thing. My nephew, for example, he waited to the second to last day before he entered to make sure he gathered as much information about what was going to happen or what could happen, and there was nobody just specifically that he was talking to, but he was just trying to understand what his market value was and how people were viewing him. And but not everybody has that luxury of having someone like me and other people that he's connected to that have information and can really make sure that he's taking a measured approach. So it's going to be spooky hours for some of these kids, and they've just given up on their dream, and they probably played their last down of football, and a lot of them don't even know it yet.
That's heavy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's heavy.
Wow.
So my last question, and this is going to pick at your expertise of what you do and what you understand about all of this.
Okay.
In a close to perfect world, because of course it'll never be perfect,
Mhm.
what changes? Like, if you were in charge of like how NIL and the transfer portal and revenue sharing and all of this stuff was supposed to work, how would you implement it? Like, what would you implement to I guess you can't necessarily guarantee, but guarantee as much as you possibly can to make sure that these kids are utilizing it and utilizing these things the way that they should and kind of give them a safety net. Like what would you implement? Like what type of caps? What type of
Yeah. So the
other
first thing I would say is that there needs to be some sort of regulation, and this is even for the protection, excuse me, for the kids. I think that every industry has regulations. Not all of them are fair, right? But I think every industry has regulations, rules that people understand, they know how to abide by, and then they also have protection either from the law and or from some type of union. So I think first of all, there needs to be a regulatory body that people respect. The NCAA is not doing its part, but theoretically that could be.
I mean, what do they ever do? See, what are they there for? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
I don't know.
they get no
So
money.
they need that, and then the kids need they need representation. There needs to be a union that's actually representing their interests. As far as NIL and revenue share, I think there should be caps, salary caps. It could be tiered based on
I
you know
said the same thing.
the way other sports are done. You can have deferred payments, which maybe is not. Some people would say is not fair, but maybe they escalate based on how many years you play, how many snaps you play, how much time you kind of put in, and you could get things kind of deferred or put in a trust or something like that. There could be stuff like that. I think the transfer portal has to come after the season. I think National Signing Day has to come after the season, right? The calendar has to change completely. I think that as far as the transfers rules, I feel like guys maybe should be able to transfer once without penalty.
Same. Isn't that what it used to be?
Mhm. And then now, and then if you want to transfer again, particularly in the same division, you got to sit out. There has to be some type of, and people would say, well, what about coaches? Yeah, I guess, I wouldn't mind if you wouldn't put, some type of restriction on coaches leaving too. But specifically, I'm talking about the athletes now. And because I also think that there's a different value, and I'm not trying to be like on a, like holier than now, higher than now type thing. But I do think that there's a value in young people being able to grind and stay through things and learn the perseverance and fight, right? And I'm not saying everybody who leaves is not willing to do that, but
And
there are,
develop.
yeah, and develop. And there's certain circumstances that I think that that's not happening. So it's really hard, and ultimately it's hard for them because it's hard to really build a program if every year you have 40 new guys because 40 guys are going
Right.
to the portal. So a lot of these things that seem like they're player empowerment will ultimately end up hurting the sport, hurting the game. And here's the other thing. This is a big one. People think that, just because you're on top and you've been on top for a long time means that you cannot fall. And that is just not true. Look at the NBA. There are a lot of people that don't even watch it anymore. People who loved it
Mhm.
and they still love basketball, but they're turned off by it. It's not exciting to them anymore. I heard somebody told me this actually on TikTok. They said there are family, three families that have had season tickets to the University of Washington football games since 2002.
Mm.
Two of those families have decided after all the stuff that's going on that they're not renewing anymore. There are people who are losing interest in the game because they don't know who's going to be on their team from year to year. This is not
Mhm.
the NFL. This is college. College has a very special place in people's heart, particularly college football. And yes, a lot of that was built off the backs of kids who were not being compensated, and some of that passion was that's part of why you see some of that passion. So that's not lost on me. But at the same time, if people stop subscribing to this because they don't believe in it anymore, then even the empowerment that we're talking about eventually ends up going away.
Yeah.
You're going to start seeing, I promise you, you're going to start seeing drops in attendance. It's not going to be 100%. People are still going to go.
Right.
But for the people who actually watch this and watch trends, they're going to be analyzing this exactly. Sorry, I'm looking at some of the comments.
Yeah. Track star. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be analyzing this differently. We see, oh, okay, but there's going to be stadiums that are 90% full, that are usually 100% full. To the average eye, that might not be a big deal. But for people who know the sport, that's a huge deal and a very, very bad
Mhm.
sign. Because once people stop believing in what they think this thing is, they're gone. And once the fans leave, this is over. So here's the thing. I'm not saying that there is a system out there that compensates the athletes, that treats them fairly for what they're doing, that treats them with a certain level of respect. Again, they're employees at the end of the day, right? So they're not the
Mhm.
bosses. So there's no employee, truthfully, that's really treated like, you know what I mean?
Right. You're
Like,
right. Right.
But there is a system out there that could be fair where you could still keep some of the passion, still keep some of the authenticity, keep some of the, as you say, development, and make this sport still be great. But if they don't get to that quickly, I'm telling you, people think that I'm being like an alarmist, and I'm not an alarmist. I'm just real when it comes to this. This thing can get out of hand quickly. So somebody's, whoever it is, powers that be, they better come. And then here's one last thing on this too. The greed has always been what's really motivated the people who
Mhm.
run the sport. And now the greed is getting to an exorbitant levels. You're talking about even the college football playoff, 12 teams. It will not stay at 12 teams. It will go to 16. It will probably eventually go to
It's gonna go to 24.
they it's and what they're not realizing is, okay, so you're gonna have 6 playoff games. You already have the national championship next year, January 25th. When is the championship gonna be? March? Who
And
is
then
gonna
they're gonna have to, like, double up on the same days as, because I'm always upset that, like, when the NFL is
Yeah,
competing with college football, but it's going to be a thing.
100%. And who's gonna travel to all these games? Who can afford to? You're
Right.
not even having these
Right.
games on campus. Some of these games are not even on campus. And you think people can travel? I was thinking about that when I went to the Cotton Bowl,
I
and I
was
was there.
there.
Yeah, and then you think about it, and you're like, okay, if we win this game, then 9 days from now we're going to be in Phoenix. Okay, and then if we win that game, 10 days from now
Right.
we're about to be in Miami. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care how much money you have. Like, that's not sustainable as a model for college football. So, and instead of going the other way or pausing, they're gonna push it even further because they want the TV revenue, and they're just really underestimating how this thing is gonna go. So, man, it is. I hate to be this person because I'm a very hopeful, optimistic person generally. But when I see things, I got to call them for what they are. And right now, it is. I don't know, man. There's just
And
too
you
many.
feel you're saying a lot of the things that, I feel and a lot of fans feel,
Yeah.
and especially, I know you, heard when Ryan Day said, "We're expected to win every single game,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's how the fans hold him accountable, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because 'Cause we're expected to win every game, but it's
Yeah.
like, how do you do that when it's just a revolving door
It's
of
crazy.
students that you have to bring up to speed of how what the culture is at Ohio State.
How do you build that culture? How do you ultimately build it? Because again, you have a handful of guys that are there. Jeremiah Smith, Julian Sand, Kenyatta. There, a few other guys, the Jermaine Matthews that have been there that are going to be the tone setters. But then they're going to be gone to the NFL next year.
Mhm.
And then you have a whole bunch of other guys that didn't grow up wanting to be a Buckeye, just got here. Maybe they're bought in, maybe they're not. How do you build? How do you build a culture
Mhm.
that
A
way?
lot of transfers coming from
A
the
lot.
SEC.
Yeah. And it's like guys are just right now. It's this is unfortunate because was brought on by just greed over the years. There were systems they could have anticipated, including the NCAA, when NIL specifically when they first lost that case. Instead of having a system in place that they could have argued for or implemented, they just let it be a free for all, and they did it because they're so arrogant and also just whiny little brats. So but this is a situation that we're in now as a result, and I don't know. We're gonna have to do something. So
Well, Mecca, so glad that I reached out to you. Thank you so much for coming on here and being extremely informative and dropping all of the gems that you dropped. Like this was really, really good. So could you let the people know? I don't know. They might need a mentor. They might need, you know what I'm saying? Do you produce? I know you got music out. Like they might need you for something.
yeah,
If they need you for something,
yeah.
how can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
Well, first thing, check out my website, MekkaDonEnterprises.com. So it's Mekka Don, my name, and then enterprises.com. You can check that out. We have a contact page on there. So if they want to get in touch with me. But if you're on social media, I'm on pretty much every platform. It's at Mekka Don Music. That's Twitter. That's Instagram. That's uh, YouTube. Whatever. It's Mekka Don Music. And then also make sure you check out my new AI powered brand management and content generation app that I'm launching on Monday, the 26th. It's crazy. This is
Congratulations. That is just
like,
so
it's called Ella Fly. I actually built it with my team, ELLIFLY, elevate and fly, kind of put together, and really to help people manage their brands and create consistent content in their voice. I think a lot of people are stuck on what they do on social media, and so this really
Mhm.
simplifies the process in a fraction of the cost it would cost you to hire a brand manager. So check that out also. And yeah, I'm available. I try to respond to as much as I can. I mean, obviously can't respond to everything, but definitely open if there are people who are have more questions, or Autumn, obviously you can hit me up, whatever. And if we have to jump back on here one day or something, let me know.
Right, right, right.
I appreciate
And, because I am who I am, you know what I'm saying? If you need an ambassador
it. Okay.
for Ella Fly, you know what I'm saying? I will do that.
Hey, you know what? Let me write that down real quick.
Go
Hold
ahead and
on.
write it. Go ahead and write it down.
Let me
I go.
write that down.
I do. I
Yeah.
put the
Okay.
pizzazz on it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I use it. This what
Okay.
I use. Don't
I
y'all like my
believe.
stuff?
Yes.
You know
That's
what I'm
perfect. I
saying?
love that for sure. I will for sure reach out to you.
All right. Well, this has been great. Again, I really appreciate you. And yeah, I'm serious. Reach out to me about the ambassador for Elify, and I will make sure that I put all of your links and your socials and stuff in the show notes.
Okay.
And there will be clips out on Instagram and all that good stuff. And I'll make sure I'll tag you to them. And anything else you want to say before we end the live?
No, that's it. Thank you, and shout out to all the people that were paying attention, writing messages during it as well. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, everybody.